Hi everyone, you're joining me with an Epic, no wait, not an Epic, a Threadripper Pro 64-core system from Lenovo. This is a ThinkStation P620.
What's your minimum specification?
So Lenovo's ThinkStation range is essentially their workstation range. It's designed for on-the-desk, under-the-desk compute, with Threadripper Pro being mainly focused for the sort of visual effects market who have already bought into the whole Threadripper ecosystem. Now, this is the ThinkStation P620. This is Lenovo's first ever AMD based platform for their ThinkStations for the last 10, 12 years. It's been all Intel. We've got entry models, we've got single socket, high-end desktop, single socket enterprise, dual socket enterprise, all built for that workstation market. And now we have their first AMD model. So this is got Threadripper Pro inside, up to 64 cores, Zen 2 cores, running at 280 watts. We've got 128 PCIe 4 lanes. We've got support for up to 2 terabytes of memory, although in this system you can only do 512 gigs because there's only one DIMM per channel. And for whatever reason, Lenovo has decided not to support LR DIMMs, but still 512 gigs is a good amount. And on top of that, there's also the pro features like Dash, which help for admin support, which is needed in a business sort of environment. Now, these systems from Lenovo, the base model is a 12-core processor with 1 stick of memory, and that's online for about $3,000. If you went all out, got the high-end 64-core chip, filled it with 512 gigs of memory, you got 2 RTX 8000 GPUs in there, plus 4 terabyte hard drives, plus 2 1 terabyte M.2 SSDs. This system can easily reach 60 grand, though apparently during February there's like a 42% off code. So that comes down to about 35 grand for a fully laden system like this. Quite a lot, you might think, but Lenovo puts those prices online, but they don't expect anybody to pay them. I asked the Lenovo rep once and they said only 5% of sales for these sorts of systems actually come direct through the website. The rest is sort of like B2B, where you've got visual effects studios, buying a dozen or 2 dozen for their artists. That usually happens through B2B channels, and there's special pricing along with all the related support, or maybe the systems are leased rather than actually purchased, which for some use cases can be cheaper. But this is Lenovo's ThinkStation P620. It's the first Threadripper Pro system on the market. Lenovo seem to have a 6-month exclusive on this, and they've done a really nice job with this system. Lenovo is a big OEM, as you probably all know, which means that they can put time and money and effort into building something unique, something that you can't simply do with off-the-shelf parts. And I'm going to go through some of the system in a breakdown for you, and it looks something like this.
So here we go, this is the Lenovo ThinkStation P620, AMD's Threadripper Pro system. This is a chunky boy, very typical of a workstation, just a front panel, handle for movement. It's quite thick and heavy, but that's a good thing in this case because it's got exactly what we need. Let's just go over the rear panel quickly. We've got dual PS2 ports. We've got our audio out. It's only a simple 2.1 because this is a compute workstation. A USB 2, USB 3.2, 10 gigabit, and then 10 gigabit Ethernet. Video outs, power. That's all you pretty much need. Oh, and your exhaust fan, of course. So this is Lenovo. This is their first AMD workstation using Threadripper Pro. I mean, using AMD at all, it's their first workstation. And this side panel comes off really easily. That is one of the easiest side panel removals I have ever done. Now, if we look inside the thing, we have got a custom motherboard designed by Lenovo, to the point where the power supply down here is custom enough that it just pops out 80 plus platinum, 1000 watts, and all it has is this individual single connector that goes into the motherboard. And what happens is all the power that the system needs goes through the motherboard this connector down here. Travels up for the CPU, so you don't need to worry about CPU power cables. All the ones for the GPUs, so such that you need GPU out, come out the side here. Same thing with the SATA, with the power cables. Obviously, if you want SATA data cables, you can add them. This PCIe bracket is very easily removable here to just pop the GPU out. In this case, we've got an RTX 6000. So Threadripper Pro has 128 PCIe lanes. It's got 6 PCIe 4 slots, 4 of them by 16, 2 of them by 8. You also have dual M.2 PCIe 4x4 slots and a Quantia 10 gig NIC. That's your PCIe there. That's a good use of 128 lanes. It's not exactly 128. I think it comes out to about 90. But workstation system. What you have under here is this. It looks like 2 coolers that are staggered, but this is actually only one. Designed for the full Threadripper bracket, that LGA 4094 socket. And this is good for, this is a system that will do 280 watts of cooling. So you've got intake here, air coming through the front, out the front, and then the air region for the bottom is coming in the front and going out the back. In the full retail version of this, there's an air baffle that separates the two, but in this demo unit we haven't got it. And front fan here, again, simple one-hand removal here. Comes in with a bracket for the GPU. In terms of memory, there are 8 slots, 4 below the socket and 4 above the socket. So the system has 8-channel memory. It can support 2 DIMMs per channel, but in the Lenovo system, they've only got 1 DIMM per channel. It also doesn't support 3DS LR DIMMs, so even though Threadripper Pro can support 2 terabytes, this only supports half a terabyte, but that's still plenty. The system we've got sampled here actually only came with 2 memory sticks. When we tested it, we had to move up to 8. But yeah, it comes with power supply needed for a 280 watt CPU. You can't overclock it. Memory is fixed at DDR4 3200, and yeah, I guess memory has its own little cooling. These little cooling adapters for memory are awesome. I want these on every system. It's just a very easy spring-loaded element here, because once you get up to those 64 gig DIMMs, they start putting out enough heat that you have to be wary of exactly what's going on there. But yeah, no, this system is designed to take 2 GPUs. It'll also take in a couple of those add-in cards that support M.2 drives. You've got space for, so even though it's only got 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch drives here, you can technically get another bracket this side to go to a full 4. But yeah, no, these ThinkStation systems are well thought out. I mean, imagine having a power supply like this where you only have one connector. Let's see if I can put it in properly first time. Yeah, and that's it for the power supply. It's really that easy.
So just to correct myself there, the airflow is actually all from the front to the back. There's just no fan on the front here, and this CPU cooler just blows all the way through. There is meant to be an air baffle here to keep the zones separate. But this is just a review sample, so it's not a full retail. But the system has a 1000 watt, 92% efficiency power supply. That's designed to take care of 2 GPUs. At the minute, I've got the RTX 6000 in here. That's a 295 watt GPU. It will support the RTX 8000 and 2 of those, plus 2 single slot add-in cards like Ethernet or additional M.2 storage, or say Mellanox connectivity. The system comes with one 10 gig port through a Quantia AQC107 NIC. That's just standard RJ45, but if you wanted SFP+, there are PCIe 4 slots for that as well. But the 1000 watt power supply is good for pretty much anything that Lenovo can put in. I really like the fact that it's a custom motherboard. It's probably a 14-16 layer motherboard because the power supply has no cables. Everything just goes through the motherboard. Everything you needed for power, and it would be so much simpler if every system was like that. Unfortunately, due to the way that modern PCs are modular, you can only really get that with something like a Lenovo or maybe a HP or maybe a Dell, some of these big OEMs that can invest time and money into developing their own custom motherboards and stuff like that. So in terms of performance, Lenovo actually shipped us this system, shipped to Nantec this system with 2 modules of memory, so only running in dual channel. Their reasoning was that for some of their customers, customers buy their own memory, or for the benchmarks that matter to those customers, it's more about the capacity than actually having all the memory channels populated. And there is some truth to this. In our testing for rendering and things like spec view perf, which is the industry standard for sort of like workstation visual effects modeling and stuff, we saw no difference in performance using a dual channel setup versus an 8-channel setup. Big thanks to Kingston for providing the memory for our 8-channel setup. But yeah, performance was within 1%, which is next to that we would classify that as no different. Whereas for some of the other benchmarks, especially encoding and scientific compute, those are two usual big memory hog requirements, memory bandwidth requirements. So those tests were anywhere between sort of 10% down using dual channel, all the way up to being 3-4 times slower using dual channel versus 8-channel memory. So if you're in that sort of market, you would want this system fully populated with memory, even if it's just 8 GB modules of DDR4 3200 RDME-CC. That's something that you really want in this. As for the performance of the CPU itself, the 64-core Threadripper Pro, the 3995WX, it's the pro version of the 3990X, running at the same power. But because it's a Pro model, it's slightly lower in frequency, but has that sort of 8-channel memory rather than quad channel. In our testing there, we actually saw a 3% improvement for the 3995WX over the 3990X, which I really wasn't expecting. That's kind of like an average over all our tests, the 3%. I'll put up some numbers of some benchmarks here just to show you what the difference is between those two. So what I think about Lenovo ThinkStation P620, from the build perspective, it's a really, really nice build. I mean, it's tiny. It's 33.4 litres versus a standard gaming PC, which is about 70 litres these days. It goes under the desk. Power, we saw with the 64-core and the RTX 6000, we saw the power about 640 watts peak with a strong crypto load on both CPU and GPU. Thermals with the quietest fan settings, CPU and GPU hit around 80 degrees Celsius. That's after 24 hours of a strong crypto load. Noise, it's audible in a quiet room. It will probably be barely audible in a proper office. You're looking at about 36 to 46 dB, depending on how you have the fan settings and how cool you want the hardware. DPC latency is 180 microseconds, which is well below the 300 microseconds we usually do. So on those metrics, it's done perfectly fine. But yeah, if anything, if you want a Threadripper Pro system, this is really nice because it's so custom. And things like the companies that this is aimed for, amortizing the cost is very easy. Putting 64-core workloads, go through your projects quicker, go through more contracts quicker, you'll earn your money back quickly. So it's a really nice system. Lenovo got the 6-month exclusive. We're going to see more Threadripper Pro systems based on more commodity hardware coming out over the next few months. But for now, this is the only option. And yeah, if you can fit the bill, it is a really nice system. So thank you for watching TechTechPotato. Give a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't, and if you didn't, please let me know in the comments how I can make this video better. If you do plan on subscribing, please hit that bell to be notified of new videos, new content coming out as and when I can produce it. Some interesting and fun stuff coming up soon. And if you want to be a special viewer, then there's always a Patreon. All that Patreon money goes straight back into the channel. And big thanks to the Patreons there who have supported me over the last few months. You really do make a difference on this channel. End of the video question, as always. What's your minimum specification? 64-core workstation. It's not exactly a potato, but it does the job.